Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
And welcome to another episode here at the back of the range. I am your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 183. Unfortunately, another setback for Tiger Woods. I'm not sure when you are listening to this episode, but it was recorded the day of Tiger's car accident in California on February 24th, 2021. As you'll hear in the beginning of this conversation that I had with my guest, we really didn't know much about his condition, and it just didn't seem natural to completely avoid the topic. Thankfully, as we all found out later that evening, Tiger was in stable condition despite suffering severe leg injuries. News changes and travels at the speed of light these days, so obviously there have been several updates to this news story since this episode has posted, but one thing that I can say that will never be outdated and will never be old news. I wish nothing but the best for Tiger, his family, not just in golf, but in life, and hope that he gets well soon. My guest on this episode is the 2018 U.S. Mid-Amateur runner-up, Brett Boner. I had a chance to meet Brett at the East-West matches at Merido last year. If you remember, there were some incredible amateur resumes on property during that tournament. Walker Cuppers, U.S. Senior Amateur Champions, guys that played in the Masters. It was incredibly impressive. Now, Brett didn't have a ton of USGA championships to his name, but not because he doesn't have the skill. You don't win the Anderson Memorial and take down Stuart Hagestad in match play if you don't have game. But Brett was a former pro that toiled on the mini tours, and when he finally decided enough was enough, he really didn't know much about the mid-amateur circuit that he was about to embark on. So we spoke about his accomplishments as an amateur, especially that crazy run in the 2018 U.S. Mid, and we also talked about his days as a pro and his beloved Auburn Tigers. We're on kind of a run here lately with Auburn, by the way. Grayson Huff, Jonathan Dismuke, and now my guest on this episode, Brett Boner. Brett, welcome to the back of the range. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. This is pretty neat.
Well, hey man, I'm glad to have you. There's lots of things we're going to talk about, with your amateur career and professional career. But, the reality is today's February 23rd in the afternoon. And, news, I don't know when this episode is going to be released. So I guess at this point we can just say what we know. Tiger Woods was involved in a one-car accident in California this morning. And I'm kind of, a little bit shooken up about what's going on. And I just was kind of curious. You're the first person that I've really spoken to about this at length. I mean, Tiger Woods has been around for just seems like forever. It's almost like it just absolutely stops the golf world right now.
Yeah, I would agree. It is very concerning. I think there are millions and millions of people, not just in the U.S., but around the globe that are interested in this. I can't imagine the number of text messages that have flown around between Verizon and AT&T and other carriers since about 3:00 today. I know that I was getting fired upon with all kind of stuff, and you just, you hope that it was just an unfortunate car accident, and that he's okay. I know he had a big week last week hosting the Genesis. I know he just had back surgery again, and you really just hope for the guy and his family that it was a simple unfortunate car accident that unfortunately is going to cause some surgeries, it sounds like, but that he can be okay. I mean, the golf world needs him. And you love the story of the comeback, right? I mean, I'll be one of the first to admit that I told many friends that prior to the episode in Orlando, with he and Elin, and then all the stuff that came out after that, before that, Tiger's head and his conscience was completely clear. And standing over a 3 or 5 footer or 7 footer, there's no one else you'd want to put that in the world. And I said, it's going to be hard for him to overcome that because, he's for the first time in his life, he probably has a conscience.
Yeah.
And it showed for a little while. And then he came back and he beat it. And that's just an incredible story. And my wife and I actually just watched the documentary 2 weekends ago, which was eye opening as well. And just a lot of things you never knew. But hopefully he's okay.
Yeah, no, I was thinking back, actually was thinking what was my first, I'm thinking back to what was my first recollection of Tiger Woods. And I'm thinking mine was, oddly enough, he beat Steve Scott in the 96 U.S. Amateur at Pumpkin Ridge.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve Scott and I actually went to rival high schools down here in South Florida. So that's kind of how I was introduced to the mania of Tiger Woods. Do you remember what your first introduction was to Tiger Woods?
Well, growing up and playing golf since I was very young, I think my dad got me started when I was 4 years old. But when I started playing tournament golf at 12, I think Tiger's 2 years younger than me. He's either 2 or 3. I think his birthday is December the 30th, and mine's December 31st.
Okay.
So I knew it's either 2 or 3. So I obviously knew who he was and heard all about him. And then I didn't play a whole lot of from a small town in Alabama, didn't give an opportunity to play in a whole lot of AJGA events, but that if you could get in them, you took advantage of them. There was a tournament down in New Orleans. I think it was called the USF&G at English Turn, and I was paired with Tiger when I was 16, and
really?
So I think he was 14. And my mother and my grandmother took me to New Orleans for this tournament, and was paired with him for the first 2 days. And Earl was there, and Tiger didn't play that well. Bunch of guys, not me, went out to Bourbon Street, and I think they were told not to, and some guys got in trouble.
No,
I think Tiger went with them. I don't think he was doing anything that he wasn't supposed to be doing. I just think he was tagging along for the ride. If I can remember correctly, I think he was with them, but Earl wasn't very happy, and Tiger didn't play that well that week. And my mother and I kind of saw firsthand the pressure that Tiger was under, not just on himself, but from his dad. So it was interesting. That was my first really introduction to that. And then we were paired with Stanford a lot when I was in school at Auburn in 1994 and 95. It seemed that we were paired with them a whole lot. And I got paired with them only once during that time, but I remember we were playing in Hawaii, and I had never played in wind like we were playing in this specific tournament. And I'm pretty sure I didn't break 80, and there weren't many people that did that day. I mean, blowing sideways, 35, 40 miles an hour. And I believe Tiger shot 71 or 72, and it was at least 6 shots clear of the next guy. It was incredible. And that's when he was probably 18.
Wow.
So.
Well, like you said, I hope he's okay. And obviously people listening to this podcast, like I said, it's recorded February 23rd, and really all we know is he was in an accident and he's in surgery. So all the best, all the best to Tiger. But you mentioned growing up in Alabama, getting your start there in junior golf. We're definitely going to talk about your alma mater, Auburn University. But before we get to that, I just wanted, obviously which I do with every single guest, get an idea of how golf became such a integral part of your life and how you got into the game. Tell me about growing up in Alabama and what led you to golf.
Yeah. So I grew up in Gadsden, Alabama. And funny enough, I was forwarded one of Eric Church's new singles called Leonard Skinner Jones over the weekend. And he mentions that this fictional character of Leonard Skinner Jones grew up in Gadsden, Alabama. And so all my buds back at home are pretty pumped that Gadsden, Alabama is being put on the map, so to speak, right now. Small town. My dad was a traveling salesman, but played golf on the weekends. And he started taking me out early, and we were members of this terrible little club in the sticks, so to speak.
It's a vast, isn't it?
And with the golf carts that didn't have the tops on them, and it was next to this big creek, and when it would rain heavily, the back nine was always closed. So we would round the front nine a few times, but he would just always take me, and then I just kind of had this more of a less a natural golf swing, and fell in love with the game. But I did play baseball until I was 12 years old, made the all-star team when I was 12. And the same summer I made the All-Star team, I was invited and got into the tournament down in Dothan, Alabama, called the Future Masters.
Sure. Yeah.
And growing up in Alabama, you always heard about this tournament, and you're like, man, if I could just play in that. And I had to make a decision, and I decided that summer that I was going to stop playing Little League and go to Dothan and play in this tournament. And that really kind of started me on, okay, golf might be a serious part of my life. Always played basketball too. I played basketball all through high school for my school, and but golf was it, and that's what I wanted to do. But I got to owe it to my dad, and as I got older and at that 12, 13, 14 years old, I'd go every weekend with him, and I'd stay at the club all day, and but when I started, breaking 76, 77, I guess 75. Somewhere in that time frame, I started playing with his buddies, and it was, $1, $2 Nassau's, and I thought it was just crazy that I might go home with $8 in my pocket or $6 in my pocket, or it was the end of the world if I had to pay out $6.
Sure.
And my dad made me, right? Yeah.
How many days can you remember just like having to give some old guy $4 and you crying and leaving?
No, it was tough. It was very tough. I'm like, Dad, can I cut the grass tomorrow again? That I just cut yesterday to make some money, make my money back. But no. But what's funny is even as of last year, I heard my dad for multiple times tell me he wishes that he would have given me $100 every now and then or whatever, and told me to go play the best guy at our club. And really learn how to play under pressure at that earlier age, not just for $1 or $2, even though that was pressure, but like he really wishes he was, and I guess that doesn't sound that good that he was teaching me how to gamble, but most people know that there's a little money on the line usually for golf, but
there's a rumor.
He does.
There's a rumor.
Yeah, there's a rumor. But he said, I wish I would have, kind of set that up for you, and even guys at other clubs in other towns, and you had a limit of $100, and I said, I'll cover you and we'll see what happens. And he said, I think that would have done you even better. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Yep. I love the stories of growing up at the little clubs that are really ratty. And I'm guessing those range balls are the white ones with the red stripe, right? The big red fat stripe down the middle that are just absolute rocks, right?
I'm not, Ben, I don't think we had range balls at that first club.
Okay, my bad.
I played at. So I think it was a huge upgrade and privilege when we joined the other in-town club, which was cool. And yes, it had the big old range balls with the red stripes and a lot of gashes in them, and they didn't necessarily fly straight.
Yeah, well, that's not overly important. So I'm looking at the map here because forgive me, I'm not an expert on the layout of cities and where Gadsden sits, but I'm looking at Gadsden, and it's basically northeast of Tuscaloosa, and it's pretty much northwest of Auburn. So obviously we know what school you ended up going to. You went to Auburn, and I know that it means a lot to you still to this day. But advise me and perhaps our listeners as to how one becomes a Alabama fan and how one becomes an Auburn fan. And, I'm looking geographically pretty similar. I'm guessing there's no question you're an Auburn guy, but how does that happen?
It's a great question. As most people around the country know, it is an awful and rabid rivalry. And growing up in the state, you do at an early age just kind of tend to lean toward one of them. Sometimes you lean softly and sometimes you lean real hard. And I was one that got it honestly and leaned hard into it. Both my parents went to Auburn. That's where they met. And great story and really cool that they met there. And then my sister went there before me. And so as I was getting decent at golf, and there was a chance that we thought, maybe I could play college golf somewhere. The dream is to go to Auburn. And I didn't really look at a whole lot of other schools. Like I said, I didn't play in a whole lot of AJJ events, so I probably wasn't on many people's radar.
Sure.
I did an unofficial visit to Georgia, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, went those. got some letters from other schools. And then I got a call and a letter from the golf coach at West Point, my senior year. And he came down. He drove from upstate New York to Gadsden, Alabama.
Wow.
And sat in our living room and, sold me on West Point. And he's like, I'd love for you to come visit. And I'm thankful that I went and visited in January because there was about 4 to 6 inches of snow on the ground.
Perfect.
And, revelry went off and it was 5:30 in the morning, I think. And we had to get up, and I went outside and watched them do their calisthenics and all that. And the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times was at the doorstep of everyone. And I remember, if you were a plebe or a first year, at any point during the day, somebody could ask you about what was on the front page of one of those newspapers. So what did Gorbachev talk about in
right.
in the G8 summit or whatever? And if you didn't know it, then it wasn't good for you. And I went to class with them and all that. And I was highly impressed. But then I landed back in Birmingham, Alabama on that January day, and it was about 65 or 70 degrees. And I thought, I can't, if I love golf, I can't go to West Point. But I did get appointed by my senators, and that was a cool honor. But I thankfully played some good golf that spring, and the Auburn golf coach offered me, some scholarship. So made my decision a lot easier.
Yeah, I was going to say, that all sounds really good. And hey, I love this country just as much as the next person. But man, I have a buddy that went to West Point, and I'm like, that doesn't sound fun. I hate to throw that. That doesn't sound like a typical college experience. Now, you mentioned you get this offer. You mentioned you get this offer by the coach at Auburn. Think back. Were you remotely playing it cool and be like, yeah, interesting, Auburn, yeah, nice? Or were you just like, yeah, where do I sign?
I can remember it. My parents told me I had a telephone call, and it was Coach Mike Griffin. It was Coach Mike Griffin, and he said, he always said, hey, partner. But he said, hey, partner, it's Coach Griffin. You want to become an Auburn Tiger? I said, yes, sir. He said, cool. I said, I'm in. So
that's all you need.
Yeah. He said, I'll send you the paperwork soon. And it was a done deal for me. And I was so ecstatic. Growing up, a huge fan. I mean, 1982, my parents took me to the first Auburn Alabama game, which was Bo Jackson's first game.
I was just going to say is that over the top on the turf? Is that the game?
That was, yep. That's when they broke the streak. We went to the Sugar Bowl that year. Went to the Sugar Bowl. I remember going back to the hotel where all the players were. My dad was taking pictures with Bo and Lionel James, Little Train James, and we still got pictures to this day of them, and he got them to sign them later on. And so I was just huge orange and blue in my family, and I still love them to this day. I take it too seriously at times, but that's just part of the rivalry.
Let's see. I do not know the answer to this question, so we'll just throw it out there. True or false? You still have a golf bag, golf shirt, something from your days on the Auburn golf team. True or false?
True.
Okay. What is it?
All the above.
Okay. You have everything.
And in fact, we had some of the most god-awful uniforms one year. Do you remember when Phil Mickelson was wearing the Fairway and Blues?
Fairway Blues.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. We had those one year where it had the tie-dye, the tie-dye shirts and the tiger print, and they were awful. And you've never seen people make so much fun of us as a team, but we kicked butt that year though. I remember that.
Because when I think of tie-dye and hippies and Grateful Dead, I think of Auburn, Alabama. Oh my gosh. I mean, that don't fly, man. You got to be out in the desert being SoCal to pull that off. That's great though.
Yep. No, I still got the golf bags and some of the uniforms in my parents' closet back home, and some of the hats, and yeah. That's
so good.
Yeah.
You mentioned, now you talk about playing Auburn. I know we talked a little bit before we started recording, but you, I actually spoke with Grayson Huff, who is a current Auburn Tiger, just won the Patriot All-American at the end of 2020. And he alluded to just, having some time playing with Mr. Duffner, probably one of the more well-known collegiate stars to come out of Auburn along, obviously I'm thinking about Patton Kazire more recently, but you were a teammate of Duffner, and without walking you through everything of your experience at Auburn, but I'm guessing you probably saw things in him that it did not surprise you to see him succeed at the next level. Perhaps things that you didn't have in your game or the way you approached your collegiate golf. Is there something you can remember seeing in him that was like, that's a little different than how I operate?
That's a really good question, Ben, because there's a lot there. First off, I was, in my mind, and most people, and especially my parents probably, I was an underachiever collegiate golfer. I probably had a lot of talent, but had a lot of other interests, and I enjoyed meeting a lot of different people at school, hung out with different guys in different fraternities. I loved kind of that life too.
Sure.
And that probably didn't help with, one, my performance, two, probably some cohesiveness with my teammates. And, a lot of those guys just eat, sleep, and breathe golf. And that wasn't me necessarily. And so my third year, I believe it was my third year. Coach told us, hey, I got this guy I was told about that I needed to give a shot as a walk-on. And, we probably rolled our eyes and whatever. Yeah. Why do we need another body in our team meetings or on practice or qualifying or whatnot? And he said, I'm going to give him a shot. And I don't remember the exact parameters he set up, but it was something along the lines of, if he shoots X over the next few rounds, or if he does this or that, then I'm going to give him a bag. And it was, I don't know how long later, but let's call it a few weeks or a month later. And this guy walks in and he's on our team. He got a bag. His name's Jason Duffner. And no one really knew anything about him at all. He didn't look like a golfer really, whatever that means. He's just a little different. And Jason likes to be different. Everybody knows. You got what's it called? What's the verb? The duffing or duffering?
Duffnering. Yeah, duffnering.
Yeah. And that's Jason. And but Jason is one of the kindest souls. He's one of the funniest guys you ever met. He can be probably hard to get to know by some people. Once you get to know him, he's truly just a great dude with an incredible sense of humor, and he's really smart, very smart guy. But nobody had any expectations of this guy, and no one was at that point in time. There was a ton of competitiveness on our golf team, a lot of strife. It was just very competitive because there were a lot of pretty good players. And we were like, well, nobody, this guy's walking on. He's not going to bother us. Well, by that spring, he was starting. And he was in the top 5. And then the next year, he was All-American. So long-winded to answer your question, I don't think I saw it in the beginning, but you could see it festering and coming along. And his work ethic was there. And the sound of his ball striking has always just been one of the best you've ever heard.
Yeah.
There's a few guys you hear it and see it. One of them is Jason Duffner. One of them is Boo Weekley. And you kind of hear the sound that they make and kind of like a Tiger or Adam Scott. And it's there. It's real.
Unreal.
So really proud of him. He's done a lot of great things for himself, and he's a true Auburn guy, and he still lives down there and does an enormous amount for the community. He's very involved in some nonprofit stuff and raised a lot of money. And I know he does a lot of good work.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the individuality of Jason Duffner. He is just not the cookie cutter pro out there. He just does his own thing. I love how he's just, I think we need more players like him. We need more characters.
Yeah.
We need more people that are just a little bit different. I remember, I guess that was maybe last year or the year before, he just did not have I don't think he had a sponsor, and he's just wearing all sorts of different hats that were just, it was great. Exactly. I was like, man, that's just that's the best. So I love that.
And now he's sponsored by Dude Wipes.
Yeah. Well, that one, I don't know. Someone needs to get in his head about that one. I'm not sure, that one I would probably draw the line. I'm like, cause at some point, I look at Jason Duffner. I think, I know you look at Jason Duffner. I'm like, oh yeah, I got to wipe my ass. Yeah. Like that's not, you don't want that happening. That's, but, I don't know if I want to be associated with that, but hey, as you can imagine, this episode is not sponsored by Dude Wipes, so I probably pissed away that chance right there.
but it could be.
It could be. It could be. Call Duffner for me. Let me see if we can work out some magic. So you play at Auburn, and you mentioned underachiever, but still you turned professional. As I kind of imagine anyone at a big D1 program thinks, well, shit, do I go get a job with the degree I earned, or do I go give this professional golf thing a shot? And that's exactly what you did. You played the Hooters Tour. You played the Golden Bear Tour down here in South Florida, I guess Central Florida maybe. And yeah, I remember that tour being a big one down here. But, as like I just said, you're not coming out as some big blue chip first timer coming out of the college program with a bunch of endorsement money, I'm guessing. How do you facilitate a professional career coming out as you stated, an underachieving collegiate golfer?
Yeah, I definitely was an underachiever, but and it was, the hardest part was my fifth year. So I redshirted my fourth year, knowing that I was going to have an extra semester of school left my fifth, and I selfishly wanted another football season. So I did wait. In my fifth year, I played every tournament, but I was playing poorly in the spring, which is probably indicative of the fact that I had finished college in March, and in April and May I didn't have any classes. So I probably wasn't taking it as seriously as I should, looking back. And my coach pulled me. He pulled me from going to the national championships. I played in the conference championships. I played in regionals. Didn't play well, but our team won. And we make it to the NCAAs, and he called me in his office, and he said, "I'm sorry, I'm not going to take you." And it was a huge blow. But it was one of the probably one of the great things that happened to me, because it kind of woke me up, and I had already decided that I was going to try to give the mini tours a shot. And my dad said, I want you to do this. I want you to see how good you can get.
Right.
You've got the talent, but you needed to devote yourself. And he said, "I'll start you out." And so he paid my entry fee to the Golden Bear Tour in '97, which I think was $15,000 for 15 tournaments.
That sounds about right.
It's organized gambling. You had 100, and there's some great stories there, but you got 144 guys or so that paid that money. So you had $144,000 purse, or minus the expenses, whatever they came out to be each event. And I rented a place down there with one of my buddies, Mason Petty, that played golf at Alabama, and Steve Irwin, Hale Irwin's son. So the three of us split a condo in PGA National. And I remember going out, and my first event was only a 2-day event, and I shot 67, 69. I hadn't broken 70 in 2 months probably in college, and I made $2,700. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Oh, on top of the world.
And I played with a guy named Ed Humanik. I don't know if you remember that name, but he was on the tour at one point, and but that was my first experience, and I thought, I can do this. And so I believe I made around $33,000 or $35,000 that summer, and covered all my expenses and then some. And my dad made a deal with me. He's like, "You pay me back, and once you pay me back, I'll give you a percent of every check you make, and then you throw the rest back in the kitty so we can keep going." And so that's, I was blessed from that standpoint that I had help for a while, but it was a great experience. I think the Golden Bear Tour was a good place to start. I don't think it was a perfect place, because you're riding in carts. You're in South Florida. There's a lot of rain delays. You're not really traveling, so you don't learn that aspect of it. But it is good to get your feet wet from the standpoint of you're playing for a lot of money, and there's money on the line.
The thing about the mini tours, I've had Scott Turner, who on this podcast, good friend. He runs the minor league golf tour, and then obviously, like you mentioned, there was the Golden Bear, and Hooters Tour, I think, was probably one of the closest to a 54, 72 hole professional tour. But you mentioned you've played the mini tours, I guess, like 8-9 years you gave it a run as playing professional. How do you? Gosh, I mean, I'm guessing, how do you finally decide? I mean, I guess if you run out of money and you just can't do it anymore, then the decision's made for you. But how do you make the decision of how long is enough? How do you? I mean, there's probably guys that are still grinding at the ages of 36, 37, And I'm thinking to myself, okay, you might be able to, make a couple bucks on the minor tour, but at the end of the day, you're going to go out there and try and, every single year there's 21-year-olds that are starting out. You're going to go up against these guys?
That's right.
Like, how do you make the decision to keep going every year?
I don't know the exact answer to that, other than evaluating your game and evaluating your body and evaluating your bank account, evaluating your goals. But for me, it was one of those things for me. Was I played pretty good my first 3 to 4 years. I never got through first stage. I put a ton of pressure on myself, like I still do today, and never got through first stage. And I had the game to do it. Guys that I were competing with and beating all year long would get through first stage, and they get through second stage, and they get their one of their cards. And for me, it was starting over. And then, I met my wife, and we got married in 2001. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary, and
congrats.
Thank you. And I started putting a ton of pressure on myself, and I started working really hard. But what I didn't do was work smart, and it really backfired. And I can remember where I was on the Golden Bear Tour. I think it's called Emerald Dunes, the first time I yipped the putt. And it was less than 2 feet. And I said, whoa, what was that? So for 2001, 2, and 3, it was awful. I was really struggling, but I just got married, and my wife and I had made a pact that we were going to get after this and keep it going. And I didn't want to quit. And part of me, I didn't want to quit because I wanted to conquer kind of what my shortcomings were at the time and the mental part, because I didn't want to end on that.
Right. So
I really worked hard. I was lucky enough to go work with Dr. Rotella, and he helped me. And in 2004, I started playing better golf and was playing some Hooters Tour and some Monday qualifying, and was playing better golf and didn't get to Q school again. But I raised some money. I told my dad a couple years before that I was done. I'm going to do this on my own and figure this out and go and kind of sell myself to guys. And here's my plan. Here's my business model. Here's what I want to do. Can you help me out? Would you be interested? And I sold I wanted to do $5,000 shares for a total of $50,000 a year. And I had a couple of even buddies I went to college with that did $2,500, and I'll never forget that. And just always thankful that they did that. But in 2005, I Monday qualified at Pebble Beach. I Monday qualified for a web tour event. I was playing great golf, played the Hooters Tour. I won on the Hooters Tour. And things were just clicking. And I thought, okay, this is going to be it. And didn't get through Q school again, and just said, honey, I want to start a family. I want to make some money. I want to have a paycheck, and I want to get off the road. And my body's just telling me, and going back to your point about, man, there's some guys that are 36, 37. I know the guys that are still in their early 40s. And I got a buddy that thankfully made it on the senior tour, Scott Perrell, who did this for so long. He did it all the way to the senior tour, and now he's top 10 in it on the money list and making millions of dollars. I'm just so proud of him. But that is few and far between for him. But you get to a point where it's almost like there's no return. Like, what are these guys going to do? Right. I was 32 when I quit and become a financial advisor, and I at least looked like I had some street experience. But at 37, 40 years old, to stop and try to figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life would be very, very tough.
Yeah, no, it's a great point that you're bringing up. Unless you have someone that can, plug and play you into a sales job or insurance, or you have some sort of skills.
That's right.
And if you don't have it, then what are you going to do? I mean, it's
right.
What do you put on a resume? Well, I do organized golf gambling for the last 15 years. I don't know how you can fill up a resume with that, but I don't know. That's kind of tough with that, but it's very interesting. And before we talk a little bit about the amateur side, and that's even more fascinating to me because of how you basically, through your own admission, really didn't know what was waiting for you on the amateur side of it. I can't skip past the Hooters Tour. I've said it numerous times on this podcast. Somebody out there has got to start a Hooters Tour podcast, because the stories from that.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly. Like I would shut this one down and just listen to that one full time. But you have probably too many stories to choose from. I spoke with Jonathan Dismuke, who went to Auburn, who's the coach at Houston. He shared a great one. I know there's no way you're going to let me down. So
yeah, Diz was a good old friend of mine, and just love that kid to death. And he's funny in his own right. I mean, he tells some great stories. Growing up in Mississippi, he was actually there when I won my first event. I remember that he was such a good friend that he was on the back of the green when I came up 18th, and I needed to make about a 4-footer downhill to win. And I remember hugging him because the week before I was in contention and hit a ball out of bounds on like my 17th hole in the final round, and went from like second to 15th and made like $1,200. And was just distraught and told my wife, I just can't do this anymore. And then I go the next week and I win. And, but what's so funny about that week is we were in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas. I think it's called Blytheville, Arkansas, about an hour north of Memphis. And the golf course was incredible. I think it was called Thunder Bayou. Awesome golf course in the middle of nowhere. But we're in this town where I ate McDonald's for breakfast, Subway for lunch, and Ken's Pizza for dinner 5 nights in a row. That's all they had. And it obviously was a good formula, but you know, my body was hating me.
I would imagine.
And we stayed at the grossest hotel that week. And I remember I wouldn't even dry off with the towels. I used my golf towel because they were these just smelled like cigarettes. The air conditioning didn't work. It was in the middle of August. I was rooming with Jake Reeves, who's a good friend and lives in Knoxville, and he's a good instructor now. But the funny part of that week is I finally won, you know, and you get this big Happy Gilmore check when your picture made.
Yep.
And there's usually a Hooters girl standing around you,
Yes.
and, you know, kind of draping on you. Well, we're in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas. There's no Hooters around there. And I got 2 of the fattest guys you've ever seen stand next to me on that picture. And my wife thinks that's the greatest thing ever, that that I didn't get the skimpy outfits.
You're playing a Hooters tour event. You're thinking there's going to be Hooters girls everywhere. You finally win. You cash a check, and you got Jethro and Bubba next to you congratulating you.
Yep,
that's a bummer.
That was it.
That sucks. Well, all right.
But I'm sure there's many other funny stories, and but it was truly a good and well run professional tour. Like it was the real deal.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the Canadian tour. It was 4 days of golf tournament. You had a pro-am every week. You had practice rounds. You had to wear pants. And you had to travel and figure out where you're going to wash your clothes and all that. And so, I mean, you know, Zach Johnson's the king of the Hooters tour. I mean, he won, I don't know how many times he won, 85 times or something. But,
well, you got him, you know, you got Ted Potter, and you got Chad Campbell. I mean, that's.
Oh yeah. Those guys, they were incredible. So it was legit. It's you know, I don't keep up with the mini tours anymore, but I know there's a lot less places to play than there used to be.
Yeah.
So.
And it seems like there's a lot of 1 day and 2 day stuff. And I think
that's right.
You know, it's a place to keep sharp, but I still just, you know, I still don't know how the 36 hole and the 18 hole stuff is going to get you, you know, ready to play on the big stages. But hey, there's people that do it. People do it all the time.
I know.
So,
yep.
So you decide to become a mere mortal and become a working stiff like the rest of us with the 9 to 5 and starting the family. And I guess around this point, I guess you're moving to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is where you live now. And it's funny, we spoke at the East-West matches at Maridoe, and I know you're thrilled to be a part of that. And there's so many great mid-ams there that have had all these great, you know, USGA accomplishments, whether it's, you know, Paul Simpson with his senior amateur wins, and there are a handful of, you know, mid-am, U.S. mid-am champs there, and just the litany of players and their resumes go down the line. You really had no idea about this amateur world when you got your status back, did you?
None, none at all. I mean, zero. I you know, I didn't even know if I would ever play in another tournament. It wasn't like, you know, I was so bummed that I was giving up on my dream from a golf perspective that I didn't consider that, hey, in 2 years from now, I'm going to be able to play in in maybe some cool amateur events, it was, hey, 2 years from now, I'll be able to play in a member guest.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say.
Or I'll be able to play in my club championship, right? It wasn't anything besides that for me.
That's what I was going to say. I'm assuming the only reason you get your status back is to basically help you with your professional career as a financial advisor. You're probably either inviting clients to play as your guest, or they're saying, hey, we got this former pro here. Let's bring him out to our club and clean up.
Yep. That's it. And so that's kind of what it was in the beginning. I mean, especially with me trying to build my business. I mean, when I got hired here at the firm I'm with, I've been there the whole time since I quit playing. And it's a great boutique regional firm that is very well known, and it's called Carroll Financial. And this guy hired me, and he said, here's your desk, here's your phone, here's your computer, get your Series 7 or 66, and then hit the pavement and start building your book of business. And, he paid me $36,000 my first year, $18,000 my second year, and $0 my third. And so I didn't have a whole lot of time to focus on,
I would imagine,
what golf tournament I might get to play in or whatever, unless I got invited to a member guest, which I did a couple of times. And it was a lot of fun. And I'm like, man, this is fun golf. This is awesome. Give me a Miller Lite and let's tee it up and have fun, which, I never, ever did before. I would never let my guard down and have a cold beer on the golf course when I was playing professionally, because I thought it would create bad habits.
Sure.
When actually I played better. But yeah. And so then, that was, I got my amateur status back in 2008. And then, the Charlotte City Amateur kind of is becoming popular again. A great guy named Braxton McLennan put that back together, and it's become an awesome event where we play Charlotte Country Club and Myers Park Country Club in Quail Hollow. And so Quail Hollow had agreed to host like the last round once every 3 years,
right.
Which was just fantastic. And so that was a big draw. And so I played in that. And then I would go back home and play in the Birmingham Invitational, which is an awesome mid-am event at my favorite club in America. But that was it. I played in those two events. And then all of a sudden I hear about, honest to God, I didn't even know what the U.S. mid-am was. I never even heard of it. I didn't know they had one. I knew about the U.S. Amateur because I missed that a few times trying to qualify when I was in college. Right. But I didn't know there was a mid-am. And so I tried to qualify for it a few times, missed by 1, 2 years in a row. And then started kind of getting hunger back again. Like I see guys from Charlotte that I knew that were qualifying for this event. And I'm like, okay, that's your goal. You want to play in a USJ event, because at that point in time, I had never played in one.
Unreal.
So I don't know. I think I finished second in the Birmingham Invitational 1 year behind Patrick Christovich, which I know you had, and I was so proud of him and happy for him to finish out the East-West like he did. He needed that, and it was really cool of him to kind of get that final winning point, even though he was on the opposite side. But so I finished second to him 1 year, and I remember him telling me, I remember this, Ben. He said, "Yeah, I play in this, and this. Last year, I'm gonna play in this, and this year." I'm thinking, oh my God, that's like, I can't imagine how much that cost to travel.
Sure.
And entry fee and plane tickets and so forth. And I could never do that. But I still wanted to play in a mid-am. And so my brother-in-law and I tried to qualify for the U.S. 4-ball in the spring of 16. And we go out and we shoot 64 and win the qualifier. And we get to go play Wingfoot in the U.S. 4-ball. My brother-in-law is a great player. That's how I met my wife. He played at SMU, and he played the mini tours for about 10 years. And he won 3 times.
Who's your brother-in-law? On
the Canadian tour. His name's Stephen Woodard.
Okay.
Great, just a great guy. One of my best friends. And he introduced me to his sister, thankfully, and allowed me to go out on a date with her. But so we get to go to that, and I'm like, okay, I made a USJ event, and we get up there, and I acted like I'd never played in a golf tournament before. I was so tight and nervous, and just played. I think we missed a cut by 2, but I played terrible. But I got a little taste of it.
Sure.
And then I go, and because I got a taste of it, I got a little more comfortable, and I actually qualified for the mid-am that year in Pennsylvania. And I think I was 5th after the 2 rounds, and went to match play. At Stonewall, 2 great golf courses, and had a blast. I learned a lot about match play that I had never really played match play. That was my first really go at it. And it was a long drive home back to Charlotte, but I was hungry. I'm like, I want some of this. So, I remember coming home, Ben, and watching Harvey and Hagestad go at it in the finals. And I'd gotten to know Scott a little bit at that point in time, not well. But that was just an incredible, incredible day of golf to watch those two play and to see what Stewart did, and to win. And that made me hungry again. And then I didn't qualify again in 17. But in 16, I was on the board at my club here in Charlotte, Carolina Golf Club, and it was announced that we were going to be the sister course for the 2018 U.S. Mid-Am to Charlotte Country Club. Okay. And from that point on, it was on my calendar, right?
Oh, yeah, I can imagine that.
And
just,
so anytime I had an opportunity to focus on golf, which with young kids and job and carpooling and all that, it's not a lot, but I'm like, okay, I'm preparing for that. I'm going to get in that. And I was so bummed in 17 when I didn't qualify for Atlanta, but I remember, I still have it on my phone, with a good friend of mine now, Parsi Ali hugging his dad at the end of 18, or the end of the match, whenever it ended. And I still have it on my phone. And I had it on my phone. I took a snap of that and I said, that's kind of I know it's kind of cheesy, but that was kind of my motivation for the following year. Knowing that it was in Charlotte. So,
So before we
kind of led me to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we talk about this 2018 U.S. Mid-Am at Carolina Golf Club in Charlotte, and I just want to ask really quickly, you mentioned the Charlotte City Amateur, and I know you've played in the Anderson Memorial. You won that in 2018, and then obviously you won the Charlotte City Amateur Championship. You briefly touched upon it, but we rarely hear about the city championships anymore. It's all about the state AMs and the invitationals and the cocktail circuit stuff. When I think of a city championship, I think back like San Francisco at Olympic and Harding Park. How important are these city amateur championships? I mean, you could obviously speak to Charlotte, but you mentioned it kind of got a new boost and head of steam, but how important is that amateur championship, not only to the city, but to the people that are competing in it and end up winning it?
Another great question, because truly it's a lot for a lot of these guys like myself, right? I mean, I couldn't get any of these other events that I've been blessed to play in since the Mid-Am. And so for a lot of guys, that's their major.
Right. Exactly.
It was my major. We have, I don't know how many guys Braxton has qualified. He has 2 different days of qualifiers.
Holy
And
cow.
this is only, you have to live in Mecklenburg County. You can't live across the border, which stinks for some guys that are technically, part of Charlotte proper, but
right.
It is what it is. And I think he gets 150 or more guys to try to qualify. Maybe 200. And so it's a big deal to a lot of people. And the fact that we got the best courses in Charlotte, to agree to host guys, on at least one round, is really the draw, right? And is what Braxton has made it to be. And he has a great Instagram site about it and following, and it's a big deal. It really is. And it's the people's, a lot of it's their major.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to make sure I follow that. And I think that's a great story. I think we need more of that. I think we need more city championships. We need things like that just to keep the game, not just growing the game, but keep it competitive. And I think that's something that, I think that's something that it's a nice badge of honor to say, hey, I won the city championship. I think that's
you're
great.
Right.
We need more of that.
You're right. And I didn't really answer your question. I think it would be great for Birmingham, Atlanta. I bet Chicago, I don't know, probably maybe has one, but, or DC or New York, and they have the Metro, but St. Louis, where Skip lives, I think there should be a great city championship. And what it's going to take is somebody like Braxton McLennan that started ours, that knows a lot of people. And he went to the power guys at all these clubs, and he says, if I can get you on board with this tournament, then I think we can get your club. Because while a city championship would be great playing at XYZ Municipal, it's even better if you play at the courses like we're playing in Charlotte or the great courses in Atlanta or St. Louis or Birmingham, right? It would give it that much more meaning. A lot of guys don't have the opportunity to play some of those courses. So
no, I completely agree. So you go to this, or you mentioned you have this 2018 U.S. Mid-Amateur Championship on your calendar, circled in all sorts of different colored pens, I'm imagining. I mean, this is it. And, couple of questions I have for you, but, you target this championship. It's in your hometown. I'm guessing that like you said, there's all these great golf courses in Charlotte. So if I'm in your shoes, I'm thinking, man, I got all this time to prepare. I'm going to, as soon as they announce where the local qualifier is, because it's only 18 holes, man, I'm going to find out what course that is, and I am going to beg, borrow, and steal my way into as many practice rounds as possible. I'm going to know that place frontwards and backwards. That's what I would do. I am not Brett Boner, because you get on a plane and fly elsewhere for your one shot to play your hometown U.S. Mid-Amateur. So help. What's happening here?
Yeah, now that you say it like that, it doesn't sound too smart. But no, 2018 was a year that I'll never forget in golf. I without a doubt played my best golf of my life, which makes no sense. I was 44 years old. My good friend Steve Harwell asked me to go down to the junior senior at the Dive Preserve in January, and we break the tournament record and win that by I don't know how many shots.
How good is that guy? How good is that guy, by the way?
Steve, he's incredible, and he's ageless, evidently. So win that, and then I believe I finished second at the Carolinas Mid-Am by a shot. I go to play in Birmingham Invitational, which was in June at that point in time. I should have won. I missed a 3-footer on the 18th hole to win. Go to a playoff and missed another 3-footer to keep the playoff going. And so I finished second there, and I'm ticked. The next weekend, my brother-in-law and we got invited to the Anderson the year before. We lost in the finals, and we go to the Anderson in 18 and we win. So, I mean, this has never happened to me.
And that's not to cut you off, but that's a invitational 4-ball at Wingfoot, correct?
That is an invitational 4-ball at Wingfoot. It's very hard to get into. You and your partner have to be members of the same club. And I personally think Wingfoot is the mecca of golf.
Okay.
There will be many people that would disagree with that, but I just think it's about as pure as it gets. The members are incredible, very welcoming, obviously an incredibly beautiful site with 36 holes of just awesome golf. That, in my opinion, could host a U.S. Open the day we play the Anderson. I mean, it's that good always. That superintendent's incredible. But yeah, it's hard to get into. And we got into it in 17, and we kind of borrowed there and got in, and then we win it in 18. So I won 2 4-balls and finished second in 2 individual events. So I'm playing good. But to your original point, Ben, I feel like I'm a better putter on bent grass. I feel like I can read bent grass better. I've never been which is weird because I putted really good when I played the Golden Bear Tour. But I mean, back then it was true Bermuda, where you could see the grain and the side of the hole was tore up and, it was shiny or dark. And some of this new Bermuda, I really don't see it well. And so I said, I'm going to go somewhere that has bent grass greens. I knew that before I ever saw the qualifying sites. And in North Carolina, if I can remember correctly, the 2 courses they had were Bermuda greens. And I think the one in obviously South Carolina was Bermuda. So I said, I got to find a place. And I did some research, and I think, I always looked back at some scores around the Philly area and New Jersey area and New York area. And based on my work schedule and my family schedule, the one in Philadelphia just kind of worked. And so never seen the course. In Blue Bell, Pennsylvania, I fly up on Sunday morning, the day before the qualifier, to play a practice round.
Oh, God.
I land in Philly. My phone turns on, and it was a text from American Airlines that your bag is still in Charlotte. and so I'm like, this can't be happening. And thankfully, I was on a very early flight, and they assured me, whatever that means to the airlines, that my golf bag would be on the next flight. So I went and got the rental car, went and got something to eat about 30 minutes away. I'd never been to Philly. I didn't know where I was going. And then came back to the airport, parked in the cell lot, took a nap, and, 3 or 4 hours from when I last landed, my bag comes. Thankfully it came. The guy was really nice. He actually brought it out to the curb for me and took my cell phone number and said, "Listen, man, I know this is a big day for you." Because he asked me about it, and he said, "Here, give me your cell phone number. I'll call you as soon as I have it, and I'll bring it to the curb," which was awesome. So he brings it to the curb. I go to Bluebell and play my practice round. I just flew around in a golf cart and looked at it, just made sure I looked at every hole, and then went out and shot 67 the next day, and got in. And it was, it was like one of those big, huge sighs of relief that I knew I had a ton of people in Charlotte rooting for me, and you don't always reach your goals in golf. I tell people we eat more poop sandwiches than we eat a nice melted cheese turkey sandwich. So it was one of those great days for me in my golf life to qualify for that.
One of the things I try and do on this podcast is try and have each guest kind of relay something that a listener can maybe take and incorporate into their game. And you can apply this, or you can reference the qualifier, or you can reference your performance in the entire tournament, which ended, which brought you all the way to the championship match. How do you perform? And I think I've asked this question other times, but I think it's very important and very poignant here. How do you get the best out of your game when it means that much more to you than perhaps any other round? I mean, you wanted to be at this U.S. Mid-Amateur so damn bad. It's in your hometown, and you're waiting on your clubs, and it's 18 holes to qualify. The U.S. Mid-Am is tough to qualify for. It's 18 holes. I mean, you get a couple bad breaks, you make a double bogey on one hole, and that's pretty much it. Not that you can't recover from double, but my point is that this is a big round of golf to get in, and then obviously you want to play well in your hometown. How do you get the best out of your game? How did you get the best out of your game when you knew it was super important?
I'm big on routine, and I think for me, if I'm getting lost in my routine, then I'm doing what I need to do. If I'm not thinking about the what ifs, or necessarily the how tos, but I look and I see the shot and I commit to it by going through my routine, and then I just accept the outcome, especially in a day like this with no reaction to the outcome of each shot. Then at least my head's in the right place. It doesn't mean that I'm going to play great golf, obviously, but that's the big key for me. And on a day like that, I think guys, they might make a bogey, some guys in the first few holes, and they just completely think that their day is shot. When, there's a lot of times where 1 or 2 under my qualifier at least get you in the playoff. And so I think patience is key in these qualifiers, just like it is in the first 2 rounds of the USAM or the Mid-Am. Like, you don't have to play your best golf in those 2 rounds.
Right.
But you just got to be patient with yourself and realize it's not the end of the world if you do have one of those bad holes. A little bit more sense of urgency in an 18-hole qualifier. But man, I kind of went through the golf course in that practice round, and I said, okay, this par 5 is gettable. This par 5 is gettable. All right. This par 4 is definitely, this club off the tee, and you're going to have wedges into these 3 or 4 or 5 holes. Hitting your wedges good. You knock it close, make a few putts, and then you really commit to long irons on these par 3s. Because that's to me where a lot of guys, including myself, especially myself, where I struggle. Like my par 3 performance probably isn't great, and so it was one of those where I'm going to commit to my club on every par 3 and commit to the shot. So it's routine and commitment.
Well said. Wanted to make sure I passed that along to someone that really got just about everything he could out of just this experience. You go into this U.S. Mid-Am, I think your stroke play, you finished around T5. You have relatively smooth matches except for a 22-hole marathon in the round of 32. Why did you do that? You're old. You just said you're old. Why would you do something like that?
Well, I'm thankful for that because it really that was probably the luckiest break against Claudio, super guy from Germany. So my parents live in Birmingham. Who knows how long you're going to be in the U.S. Mid-Am? So they didn't want to drive up. They didn't want to stay with us because they didn't want to be a distraction to me and the family during this time, which I thought was terrible. I wish they'd have come, but so they didn't come the first 2 rounds. They did not come for my first round match. And I guess it was the next day they let my wife know they were coming. So they missed the morning match. No, I'm sorry. The morning match was that match with Claudio.
Right.
And I look up I'm on the 18th green and we're all square going to 18. And I hit a horrific chip. I had about an 8-footer downhill. He had about a 4-footer, maybe less. And I miss it. And I look, as soon as I miss it, he gave me the putt. I turned around and looked up and I saw my parents.
Oh.
And I said, "You've got to be kidding me. They just got here. They're going to see this guy make this putt and it's over." And, unfortunately for him, unfortunately for me, he missed it. And we go to 1. And anyway, whatever, I think I made a birdie or par on the 4th extra hole and got through. So I was very glad and thankful that my parents got to see more golf, at least at that point in time.
And then you roll in, I guess you kind of got through the round of 16 relatively smoothly, 4-3, and then, get through the quarterfinals 2 up. And then you're in the semis against Stuart Hagestad, which, as you mentioned just a little bit earlier, you saw the fact that he won in 16 over Harvey. And I guess one thing I wanted to bring up that, whether people listening go to amateur events, especially match play amateur events, as the week progresses, it's not like the fans start flocking in as it gets closer to the final. It's not like they're trickling in from the round of 64. Then all of a sudden it's, 9 deep in the quarters and the semifinals. But in this situation, you have a pretty big contingency of fans because, again, it's your own hometown. And is this, this epic match you play against Hagestad where you're reeling off putts throughout the back 9, do you when was the last time you played in front of a crowd that big that were basically there following just you? I mean, I know you've Mondayed into events and you've played on the PGA Tour, but I think you can agree that people aren't coming out to see Brett Boner at Pebble Beach.
Yeah. No, other than to make fun of my last name.
Well, no, I didn't listen. We're going to stop the episode right here. Did you realize that we are over an hour in and I did not for once say that the name Brett is funny? I have never made fun of your name, Brett, once. And I don't think I'm getting any credit for that.
I appreciate that. I always heard you were a kind soul.
I mean,
so I appreciate that.
All right. So anyway, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I don't think I'd ever played in anything where there was that many people coming just to see me, and the support that week was crazy. It really was. It was a dream I won't say dream come true. It was a dream. Like I was living in, it was an out of body experience because we're in my hometown. It was also a tough experience, Ben, because my brother-in-law, who I mentioned earlier, Steven, he qualified. The day I qualified, he went to Virginia and got through in a playoff. So, and he grew up at Charlotte Country Club. And so it was special for us. I mean, our parents, our families, our wives, our children followed us that week. He made it to match play. He lost in the second round. If he would have won 2 more matches, he and I were going to be playing each other.
Wow.
So that was a storyline in and of itself. But the people out following, it just kind of kept getting bigger and bigger. I remember people from church, people from the neighborhood, people from work, people from the club. I just kept seeing faces and faces and faces. And I think it gives you a lot of energy. And I think I was just so focused that week that it didn't like get to me. It didn't make me any more nervous at all. I mean, I think what's on the line makes you nervous anyway. So, I think maybe it helped. I think it definitely helped from the opposing players, and them knowing that they had a big contingency rooting against them. So it was really neat. It was really neat.
Who in your contingency of fans at the U.S. Mid-Am did you perhaps think was this guy's going to get kicked out? I mean, I love him, but this might not be his first time, or this might be his first time at a golf tournament. We're not exactly at a NASCAR event here. Can you think of someone that was close to you that was there that you were like, you're trying to worry about your own golf, but you're also worried about like, oh shit, we might have a problem here?
Why would he get kicked out?
I don't know.
You mean like
running on
too many beers,
too
or
many beers, running on the course, just yelling or something like that? It's just, I'm just
there,
fishing for a joke, really. I just thought
there were a couple guys in blue jeans that I thought, did you really wear blue jeans out here to Charlotte Country Club? But at the same time, I knew one of them for sure didn't know anything about golf.
Okay, right? No, I was just fishing for a joke.
So I didn't know. Nobody did anything too crazy. Now, if I'd have won, it could have been another story.
Oh, so. Sure. So you have this great match against Hagestad. Now, you and I talked about this, how you thought a lot of people ask you about that match more so than the Kevin O'Connell match. Am I missing something about that match, or what am I missing about that?
You're unbelievable. I think obviously Stewart is just this incredible amateur golfer, right? He's
right
on a Walker Cup already, and in my opinion should be on another one. And he's one of the best amateur golfers in the world.
Yep.
Right. He's also got he's just well known, and everybody knows who Stuart Hagestad is. He's this West Coast guy. He's really tall. He's a good looking dude. Hits it a mile. I think he was 29. No, he's younger. I think he was 27.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Because I believe he was 25 when he won at Stonewall. So I'm 44 years old, and there's no way I should be hanging with this guy. And it was a back and forth match. And I remember going back to the comment about gaming. We get to number 11, a par 3. I think in the morning round, I hit like a 6-iron, and we get up there, and they got the tee way up, and it's over water, and this pin is literally 4 steps on the green, 6 steps over the water. And I remember hitting this like sawed off wedge, and I hit it to about 8 or 10 feet. And he gets up and he hits a shot, maybe even inside me. And we're walking off the tee, and he goes, "Did you hit that fat?" And I thought, I just hit it 8 feet.
Right.
And I thought I hit it pretty good. I looked at him, I said, "No, man, I hit it pure." I don't know if the experience 2 years earlier helped me not let that get to me. I don't know if he was trying to game me or not, but maybe I'm being defensive from what happened 2 years earlier, but it just kind of appeared that he gamed me, but I got through it. I went up and made the putt. So did he. We moved on. And then I just started making putts, coming in, and made, the greatest putt of my life on the last hole to beat him. Yeah.
That putt on 18 and the reaction and the fist pump, that's one of the best. I mean, that fist pump is actually Steve Harwell-esque that I saw at the East-West matches. I mean, yours is good. It's in the same conversation, but his is, legendary. I captured a photo of him, like one of the multiple frames of that. I mean, it was legendary. So you get through Hagestad. Obviously, I guess, looking at the seeding, I think he was 8, you were 5, so it's not really was an upset, but I'm guessing you're thinking it was just because of his stature in the game and the age difference. But you now are in the final of the U.S. Mid-Am, and it's an all-Carolina final with Kevin O'Connell. Mm-hmm. And I think you had said previously in interviews you just didn't have your best that day, and too many holes were won by Kevin due to just maybe just too many bogeys, he's winning too many holes with pars. He just couldn't recover from it. But I want to talk to you a little bit about, obviously we know what happens to the winner of the U.S. Mid-Am, and that obviously didn't go the way you wanted to. But I remember when that U.S. Mid-Am was occurring, there was a lot of conversation about amateurism and reinstated amateurs, and both you and Kevin are reinstated amateurs. And I remember how they were like, first of all, I've met Kevin O'Connell at East West. I met him at the USAM, and just the nicest guy and funnier and shit. Just the nicest guy in the world. And I just remember thinking, the rules are in place by the USGA of how you can get your amateur status back. They make the decisions. And I just remember it felt unfair that people were talking about, well, he's going to be turning pro soon. He figured he'd just dip a toe into this U.S. Mid-Am. and now he wins it. And it almost felt like he was leaning towards being a professional, but playing an amateur event. You both are in the same boat. You're reinstated amateurs. You want to play competitive golf again. What are your feelings on reinstated amateurs? I mean, I know you're one of them. You may be partial, but I mean, I'm sure this conversation comes up to you numerous times. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, that's a loaded question and conversation. That was my first real taste of kind of the negativity around the reinstatement. Friends would send me, and by the way, you mentioned, I didn't play well that final match. I made too many mental mistakes. I got way ahead of myself. And there's a specific moment where we were all square through the first 9 holes, and Kevin hit a terrible tee shot on 10, and I hit a great tee shot, and he hit a poor second shot. And unfortunately, it's one of those moments where you get ahead of yourself, and I'm about to go one up, and I got a wedge to this back left hole, and I pull it, and I hit it to where the only place you can't hit it. And I ended up making a double bogey, and he made bogey and won the hole. Instead of me being one up, I'm one down. And I just wouldn't forgive myself for that. And it just started amplifying and snowballing, and my mind was going quicker. And I just lost the next 4 holes in a row. And so I lost 5 holes in a row, and it was just it wasn't almost, it was, I couldn't recover. And so just couldn't believe that I blew it like that, because the process was working the whole week until that one shot. And it's just the fact that it was a bread and butter wedge shot, it upsets me even more. So, but I remember friends sending me kind of cool tweets that somebody would send. Like Jay Billis was out there following us, and Billis took a video, and I guess he posted it on Twitter. And the comments after that, whether it's about my golf swing or about my name or about my look or my clothes, I mean, it was just constant, just negativity. Yeah. And I had never experienced anything like that. I'm not in the limelight, so I don't know. And then, the USGA post stuff, and people are sending me the USGA highlights from around the match against Stewart. And I read some of those comments, unfortunately, and this was after the tournament, but stuff like, I feel real sorry for Brett after playing the mini tours for 9 years.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Or, here's a real amateur here, played mini tours for 9 years. Well, hey buddy, I played the mini tours for 9 years because I'm really not that damn good. And I played the mini tours for 9 years and never made it to the tour, and never had exposure, and never won $1 on the PGA Tour. So I just had never experienced that. And I understand that it is a tough conversation to have. And there are gentlemen that shouldn't ever get their amateur status back, in my opinion, but I never considered myself one of them until that.
I'm guessing Kevin faced the same stuff, if not worse.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
So
it's an interesting conversation. And I know that they're constantly kind of monitoring it and deciding, what's the best and all that. But I think Charles Warren just got his amateur status back this past year. I think he had to wait 8 years.
Wow.
So I don't know how they come up with that formula. That's crazy in and of itself. I guess 8 years, in their opinion, 8 years away from the game for somebody like Charles was enough to kind of say, okay, you've kind of lost the edge of professional golf, and now we accept you back into amateur golf.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
I just was curious about it, and it's so funny because I've heard, I've had that conversation numerous times, and people assume that, well, they play pro and then they just get their status back because they want to go win a U.S. Mid-Am and beat up on a lot of the everyday guys, and I'm just like, really? You think that's the only reason they want to do that? No, I think they just want to be able to. I mean, really, you think they just show up at one of those and they just boat race everyone? No,
exactly.
I don't think that's the case. I think it's more, and I think it's great how you were like, I didn't know any of this U.S. Mid-Am shit existed. I think that's perfect. So,
yep. I didn't.
No, well, you've obviously had a fantastic time playing mid-amateur golf. We spoke a little bit about the East-West matches at Merido, but that one was, gosh, I mean, being in that room.
Well, I'll just say real quickly about that. I got to thank Scott Harvey and those guys. In my opinion, and I think most others that played in that this past year would agree, in the Mid-Am world, there's 4 big events. There's the U.S. Mid-Am, there's the Coleman at Seminole, there's the Thomas at LA Country Club, and there's the Crump at Pine Valley. And those will always be, if you can get in those four, played any of them, right? I mean, that's the creme de la creme for mid-amateur golf. And those are hard to get into. I think the East-West is going to be right behind the U.S. Mid-Am now. I think it's that much fun, that many good players, that many great stories. The history of the captains, the tightness of the guys. I pinched myself for even playing in the first one. I wish we would have won. I played absolutely horrific in my final match. Actually, out of body experience. I played good the first three, but the last one, and so I feel guilty that we didn't win. And I feel bad for Captain Paul. But that to me is going to be like the goal, the 2-year goal everybody's going to have in their mind is to make that going forward.
Yeah, that was an incredible experience for me to just be there covering it and just seeing. I mean, gosh, what was it? 650 USGA championships in the room at the same time. I mean, just
unbelievable,
stupid, just unreal.
Yep.
You mentioned the Thomas, the Crump, and the Coleman. Now, these are, like you said, these are pretty much the Triple Crown Mid-Am events, so to speak. You've played in all three, so let me ask you a question. Thomas at LACC, Crump at Pine Valley, Coleman at Seminole. Most fun, most stressful, and which one would be the most fun for spectators?
Wow.
I think
without a doubt, Seminole and Pine Valley are the most stressful.
Okay.
For your first time.
Okay.
Right. And because they're equally hard.
Right.
In completely different ways. And the Seminole was the first one I played in. That was after I finished second in the Mid-Am and lost in the finals. The next year I got invited to those three, and Seminole was the first one. And again, I don't know any of these guys.
Right.
I don't know much about this whole secret. I use this term as a funny. There's like this secret society of Mid-Am golf that you can't break into. And I don't know a lot of them. And there's so many great quality guys out there that just love golf. As I told you, I'm not a golf nerd. I don't know anything about golf equipment. I don't follow golf equipment. I just got a new Titleist driver, and it's my first new driver in 12 years. I'm still playing the 909, and people make fun of me all the time. But so I don't know much about all this stuff. And I got to Seminole, and I was so nervous, and it was unfortunate because I played terrible. But I did have fun, and I got to meet a lot of these guys. And they were so welcoming to me to play in their kind of the practice round, a little money game, and Skip Burkmeyer, who he and I were born on the same day in the same year. We became buddies, and he took me in kind of and showed me around and introduced me to all these guys. So, but it was still stressful. Those two are so hard and so stressful. LA was a blast. My wife went with me. You're playing in the middle of Beverly Hills on this incredible golf course that's about to host the U.S. Open soon. And I had played there once before, and just loved the place. It's got an awesome, cool vibe. So you're definitely a little bit more relaxed there. At least I was personally, and had a blast. And I actually finished third. So maybe that has something to do with it. But all three are just incredible.
Well, Brett, yes, this was a long episode, but seriously, I enjoyed the conversation. Clearly, you've been able to rise to the challenge against stiff competition, and I hope we can do this again sometime. I hope you come back to the back of the range. It was really great talking to you and meeting you at East West, and I wish you nothing but the best in 2021.
Well, Ben, thank you. I want to say I appreciate your passion for this and for the amateur game of golf. It's really cool what you're doing, and I'm hopeful that these golf associations around the country and these big tournaments, continue to welcome you and hire you to come on and cover their event, because there's a lot of people out there that don't know much about all this stuff, like I told you myself, and I think it would be great for you to continue what you do. You're a great photographer, even though you won't admit it, and you got a big talent, so I hope that you can continue to grow this thing.
Well, thank you very much, Brett, and thank you for being a guest here at the Back of the Range. Don't forget, follow along on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Every single episode is available at thebackoftherange.com. We'll see you next time here at the Back of the Range.